we've moved now at the Center for Systems Awareness from focusing primarily in education to really opening up the work to as many people as possible. And we've done that primarily through demand, right? So we would like to still have a focus of making sure that our younglings, our kids, the children of this world, are kept safe and healthy and can grow and thrive and flourish. But that shouldn't be a question for education alone. It's also for all the parents, it's also for all the communities and so on. So the opening up of this structure is what we call the Enlivenment Project. The reason why we call it the Enlivenment Project, there are two reasons for that. One is, one of the ways people have kind of been engaging in visions of change in the world is with an idea that enlightenment will come to a next level of human consciousness and will be enlightened. And I don't know about you, but I've been on my cushion every day for 20 years, for at least an hour a day, and long retreats several times a year for all these years. And I'm like one step on the path, right? I do not think that it's likely that human consciousness will grow into some more enlightened being. I just don't think that we're there. When I look at the news or I look at my news feed, that does not seem to be in the cards right now, at least. However, enlivenment is something that is much more connected to who we are as a species and something we've forgotten. So if we can re-enliven our structures, the structures of society, the structures of our institutions, how we work, how we do things, I'll give you an example. One of the large organizational structures that we work with, these were first movers, right? A lot of these people making sure that education system was still, they were on incredible work hours, and it was just really intense for people because they were firsthand experiencing all the trauma in the system of people who just almost couldn't hold it together. All of a sudden, these people who did all this work in a process, you know, where everything was in lockdown and crazy and we all got sick and all those things, were all of a sudden mandated that they had to come into the county office to work. A huge building. There's no windows. And they all sit in cubicles, not everyone, but most of the people who were called into work sit in cubicles. They were mandated to come to work. They had to stay in their cubicles. They had to still meet on Zoom, and they had to wear masks all day. And even if the person that they were meeting with was in the next cubicle over, they couldn't meet in person. They had to do it on Zoom, but they had to sit in their cubicles all day long with their masks on in front of their computer instead of sitting at home. That to me is the opposite of enlivenment. That to me is a dead and rigid structure that we're putting into an organic, living, flourishing system. And people die slowly in a situation like this. Now, I use that as an example because we see that everywhere. We see it how we've optimized for efficiency. We see it how we're in constant, the mode of competition, of achieving and accomplishments and so on. All the ways in which we have to show ourselves to the world and the way in which we've structured, our systems of education, our systems of healthcare, our societies in general and so on. It's all for, a rigorous, rigid kind of scaffolding. And then you try to put that onto what's truly an organic system. We, the humans, are living beings. So you try to put this rigid structure on top of something that's an organic system, and then it can't grow properly. And I think that's the outcomes that we're witnessing, that people are suffering from the very way in which we've structured ourselves. So the Enlivenment Project is the invitation for people to help re-enlivening the systems that they're in, instead of just the revolutionary approach, which I'm drawn to in many ways, is to sweep it all away and do something anew. However, if people don't change, the anew will look exactly like the same. We've seen that over and over again in history. It might produce slightly better changes, but it's still the same power struggles, it's still the same hierarchies, it's still people wanting stuff and the greed and the disconnect and so on. So I don't think that that's a viable solution. But if we instead work towards coming together more, becoming more aware of how we show up, cultivating care and attention in all the places where we work, then we're going to overgrow the rigid structures. Nature is going to take over. Our own human nature is going to take over from those rigid structures, and we can live and breathe again. So that's why we call it the Enlivenment Project. My hunch is that if enough people in enough different segments in this whole kind of rigid grid that we're locked into, if enough people start working differently and showing up differently and committing to being like this in the world, that's how change will happen. The system will start to resonate differently, and that's how change will happen. And it's interesting because people start to recognize it. So one person, for example, shared with us, we're in a process in California where our team, we have an amazing team that does site development. So they go out to schools and to after-school programs and so on and work directly with the kids and the teachers in the classrooms, right? They work with the whole schools and so on. The challenge is that we can't get teachers to do the training because teachers can't take time away from the classroom. And as one person pointed out in one of these settings was, well, the structure in place is preventing us from being able to change the structure. And that's the predicament that we're all locked into. We have to work. We have to, the conversation in Danish policy right now is that people have to work more because there are going to be many more elderly people and this and that. And I'm like, that is not the solution. People need to thrive. They need to do things that they're meaningful for them. They need to understand how they're connected to the world around them. They need to rediscover who we are as a social species. And we need flourishing. We do not need to be slaves of this financial structure and competitive structures that we've created everywhere in the world. And we can call it whatever we want, internalized capitalism or white male supremacy or whatever. I don't really care about the terminology. But what I do care about is it's the old paradigm. We got a lot out of that, but we've come to the end of it. We got Western science and medication, yay for that. We got all the incredible things that we're able to do in the world right now, yay for that. But we cannot continue in this path. We have to birth a new paradigm that is much more focused on who we are as a living species. We are organic beings, and our societies and ways of working and interacting have to be modeled out of these organic exchanges. Otherwise, we're going to kill ourselves off as a species, and we're taking a lot of other species with us in that process. The Earth will survive. I'm not about saving the Earth. The Earth has so much wisdom and has been through all these phases throughout the eons. The Earth will come back. I have no doubts about that. There'll be plastic-eating fungi everywhere, and then new things will arise and evolve. Nature is one big experiment of variation and creation and so on. So something beautiful will come. But the process in between will create a hell of a lot of suffering for humans and for all the other species around us. And maybe we don't need to do that. Maybe we can readjust and do something differently. So that's our aspiration, at least. That's why we do this work.